A Catholic priest is sitting across from a podcast host with tens of millions of listeners. The host isn't asking about politics. He isn't asking about the economy. He's asking about demons. This isn't a scene from a horror film. It happened on two of the biggest independent shows in America earlier this year, around the same time, without either show coordinating with the other. And it raises a question that has nothing to do with whether you believe in the supernatural. Why is this conversation happening right now on some of the largest platforms in the country? The priest's name is Father Chad Ripperger. He holds a doctorate in theology, spent years teaching in a seminary, and has served as an official exorcist for two dioceses, first in Tulsa, then in Denver. He's not a fringe figure. He's been formally appointed by the church to handle cases other priests can't, and according to him, requests for help are rising. Ripperger has said that when he first started his work, there were only about a dozen active exorcists in the entire country, and only a handful of them really knew what they were doing. Today, that number is growing. But here's the part Ripperger himself wants you to hear first. Back in 2015, he said that out of 150 cases his community reviewed in a single year, only 3 turned out to be actual possession. The rest had other explanations. He's even said Hollywood's version of possession is exaggerated, tilted toward the sensational. So the man in the middle of this, the one people call when things get strange, is telling you most of the time it isn't what you think, which makes the real question more interesting. If genuine cases are this rare, why is the conversation about them getting so much bigger? To answer that question, you have to look somewhere else entirely: American mental health. Among young adults, roughly 1 in 10 now lives with a serious mental illness. About 12.6% of adults aged 18 to 25 reportedly said that they have seriously considered suicide in the past year. Among teenagers, the suicide rate climbed 85% between 2007 and 2017, and it hasn't meaningfully come back down ever since. Substance abuse, especially involving fentanyl, remains at some of the highest levels ever recorded. Now here's the part that doesn't fit the usual story. Multiple long-term studies out of Harvard have tracked people who attend religious services at least once a week. Their risk of depression is 16 to 29% lower than people who don't. Their risk of dying from what researchers call death of despair, suicide, overdose, alcohol-related illness, is substantially lower too. That's not a claim that faith cures mental illness. It's a data point about where a meaningful number of people are finding something that isn't showing up in the clinical numbers. And here's the part that comes from inside psychiatry itself. The American Psychiatric Association's own research found that 6 in 10 American adults say their faith or spirituality is an important part of supporting their mental wellness. But among people who belong to a religious community, only about half of them say that their community actually talks about mental health openly, without stigma. To be clear, this isn't an argument that religion replaces medicine. It's something narrower. When a system built to explain suffering leaves part of the picture out, people don't stop looking for answers. They look somewhere else. That's the gap Chad Ripperger's phone is ringing into. Here's the second piece, because none of this would matter for our story without a quieter shift underneath it, where Americans actually go to hear ideas discussed at all. In the US today, only about 25% of people say they trust the news most of the time, one of the lowest levels of any country measured in the world's largest ongoing survey of news consumption. At the same time, 14% of Americans now listen to news podcasts on a weekly basis, and a full third of the country turns to YouTube for news every week, more than almost any other single platform. That shift isn't just about news, it's about which conversations get a platform in the first place. 12 years ago, a story about exorcism belonged on late-night cable, framed as entertainment. Today, it airs in a 2-hour unedited conversation on a podcast with a reach that rivals most cable news programs. No laugh track, no ghost hunter gimmicks, just a long conversation treated like any other serious topic. The platform changed, and when the platform changes, so does what gets taken seriously. So put these two threads together. 1. A mental health system that, by its own researchers' admission, has a blind spot around meaning and spirituality. 2. A media landscape where trust in traditional institutions has fallen to some of the lowest levels on record, and long unfiltered conversations on any topic now reach audiences that used to belong exclusively to television. Put those together, and a story about a priest fighting rare cases of possession stops being a curiosity. It becomes a symptom of something bigger. What happens when trust drains out of the institutions that used to hold the answers, and where people go looking once it does? So is any of this real? Ripperger himself says the honest answer most of the time is no, 3 cases out of 150. But maybe that's not actually the most important question here. The more interesting one is this. When the systems we build to explain human suffering leave gaps, people fill them with old language, new platforms, whatever's available. That's true whether the subject is demons or something else entirely. Something is clearly missing for a lot of people right now. The question we're sitting with isn't whether it's supernatural. It's what we're going to do about the gap it's filling. Thank you for watching. If you want to keep decoding the forces shaping where this country goes next, be sure to hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.